Snow in Oswin City had always been bitter, but that night it felt carved from knives. I hit the ground hard, my back scraping against a sheet of black ice, the thin silk of my nightdress tearing open under me. Wind from the harbor slashed across my skin, stealing the air from my lungs. Above me, framed in the apartment doorway, Damian Hart laughed so loudly it echoed along the concrete corridor. "Look at this trash," she crooned, lifting her phone to record. "Want me to call the beggar downstairs to pick you up?" The door slammed, but not fully, just enough to remind me I could still crawl back inside if I wanted to beg. A few residents cracked open their doors, then shut them quickly, as if my suffering was contagious. A girl down the hall live-streamed me, her filter turning my shivering face into a trembling cartoon cat. Cold burned through my bones, numbing my fingers until I couldn't feel the ground beneath me. Then the darkness broke. 3 beams of white light cut through the narrow alley as a convoy of obsidian-black Rolls-Royces glided to a stop, sealing the exit. Exhaust formed clouds around their chrome grills. A man in a long black tailcoat stepped out of the lead car, an umbrella unfolding with a crisp snap. His shoes didn't so much as scuff the slush. "Please step in, my lady," he said. He offered me his gloved hand, as if I belonged to a world far removed from the freezing asphalt. A world I had walked away from 10 years ago, and one nobody here knew existed. My world, my inheritance, the legacy Damian and his mother thought they could bury. I tried to move, but my body shook too violently. The man shrugged off his heavy cashmere coat and draped it around my shoulders, cocooning me in warmth so sudden it stung. 2 security personnel stepped out behind him, forming a shield that blocked me from every prying phone pointed my way. The live stream girl gasped when one of them silently lowered her camera. "My lady, it's all right," the man murmured. "You're safe now." His voice struck something deep in my memory, faint but unmistakable. Aldridge, the Wynn family's senior butler. A ghost from a life I had forced myself to forget. A gust of wind howled between the buildings, and my teeth chattered uncontrollably. Aldridge crouched down and lifted me gently, as if I weighed nothing. "Your carriage awaits," he said, turning toward the open rear door of the Rolls-Royce Phantom. I didn't call anyone," I whispered, struggling to form words as my lips numbed. "How did you find me?" He paused only long enough for the door to close out the cold. From outside the tinted windows, the alley shrank, swallowed by the blizzard. "The chairman never stopped looking for you," Aldridge said softly. Warmth from the lamb's wool seats seeped into my skin, but the tremors in my chest wouldn't stop. I pulled the coat tighter, its scent cedarwood and old money, pulling a decade's worth of memories to the surface. Memories of Frostfall Estate, of the family I fled, of the name I had buried, Aurelia Wynn. Aldridge took the seat across from me, folding his hands with the precision of a man trained to serve dynasties. "My lady," he said, "we leave for Frostfall immediately. The chairman has been waiting for this call for a very long time." "I didn't call," I repeated weakly. No Aldridge replied, but someone did. The convoy pulled away, engines humming with quiet power as the snow swallowed the alley behind us, along with everything I once believed about my marriage, and everything that was about to burn. An hour before the snow buried the city, my world had still been warm. The apartment smelled faintly of rosemary and lemon. I had a pan of chicken roasting in the oven, the kind Damian always said he loved, though now I realize he barely tasted it. Candlelight flickered against the glass, turning our cramped living room into something almost tender. I remember humming under my breath as I set the table, feeling strangely hopeful for reasons I couldn't explain. I thought maybe for once he'd come home early. Maybe he'd smile. Maybe we'd talk like we used to, back when our marriage still felt like a real thing. The door slammed open so violently, the plates on the table rattled. Damian stood there with snow in his hair, eyes blazing, chest heaving, as though he'd been rehearsing his rage outside. Behind him, Vivian staggered, in already tipsy, her lipstick smeared, as if she'd applied it in a moving car. "Where is it?" Damian shouted, kicking the door shut. "Where's your phone?" I froze, midway through placing a fork. "My phone. It's in the bedroom." "Why?" He didn't answer. He crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed the front of my sweater, and shoved me backward against the table, rattling the silverware. Candle wax spilled across the runner like spilled tears. Vivian giggled. "Check her pockets, darling. Women like her always hide things." I tried to stand tall, but the fury in his eyes made my stomach hollow out. "Damian, you're scaring me. What's going on?" He shoved a stack of papers into my chest. "Sign them." I looked down. Divorce petition, asset transfer, non-disclosure agreement. All dated today. All notarized in advance, as if he had prepared every detail long before walking through the door. What is this?" My voice cracked. "We didn't even talk." "You should have thought about talking before sleeping with your coworker," he said, spitting the accusation through clenched teeth. I stared at him breathless. "I don't even have a coworker. I work freelance from home. You know that." "Don't lie," Vivian screeched. She whipped out her phone and shoved the screen into my face, a blurry photo of a man hugging a woman in a cafe. The woman had my hair, color my coat, but not my face. The angles were wrong. The photo was nothing, a smear of shadow and coincidence. "That's not me," I whispered. "It's enough for me," Damian snarled. "Sign the papers, now." Jade burst into the room, holding her phone, upright live stream already running. "Guys, look. Homewrecker caught. Say hi. Aurelia." I tried to cover my face, but Vivian yanked my hand down. "No hiding, sweetheart. Actions have consequences." The humiliation burned hotter than any oven. I had never cheated. I had never even looked at another man. I had scrubbed floors, done freelance gigs, until dawn, planned his meals, supported every project he claimed to be launching. My life had bent around his needs until I barely recognized myself. "Damian," I whispered, "I love you. Please, just listen." He slapped the folder against my face. "Sign, or I swear I'll ruin every friend you have left." The mention of friends stung more than his words, because the truth was, I didn't have any. I had cut ties with everyone the moment I married him. He preferred it that way. Isolation was easier to maintain when the cage was gilded with sweet words. I opened my mouth to protest again, but Vivian suddenly lunged forward, grabbing the collar of my night sweater, tearing it open. Jade cackled, zooming her camera in. "There," Vivian hissed. "That's what trash looks like." My legs nearly buckled. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered. "What have I ever done to you?" Vivian leaned close, her breath thick with alcohol. "You married above your worth, and now the balance is being restored." Damian thrust a pen into my hand. Last chance. My gaze shifted to the papers again. Divorce asset transfer, NDA. Something inside me cracked, not from fear, but from the realization that these documents had been prepared long before tonight. He had never loved me. He had been setting the stage for months, maybe years. Hands trembling, I backed away, shaking my head. Damian lunged forward, grabbed the front of my nightdress, and shoved me toward the door. The cold blasted through as it swung open. "Get out," he growled. You don't live here anymore." Vivian laughed, lifting her glass. "Bon voyage, sweetheart." The last thing I saw, before the darkness swallowed me, was the warm glow of the apartment, the life I thought I had closing behind me. It didn't latch. It didn't need to. They were done with me, or so they thought. The drive to Frostfall Estate felt like sinking into another universe, a world wrapped in silence, in velvet, in the kind of wealth that presses against the lungs. Snow swallowed everything outside the windows, turning the highway into a tunnel of white. But inside the Rolls-Royce, it was warm enough that I could finally breathe. Yet warmth didn't stop the shaking. My body trembled from exhaustion, but my mind trembled from fear. I kept waiting to wake up, to find myself back in the apartment, to hear Damian accusing me again, to see Vivian's drunken smile. But the leather beneath me was real. The lamb's wool blanket around my shoulders was real. And the man sitting across from me, Aldridge, the silent shadow of my childhood, was painfully real. When I was 10, he used to bring me caramel biscuits after violin practice. When I ran away at 22, he watched from the steps of Frostfall Estate, but said nothing. Now, 14 years later, he was looking at me like I had been missing, not gone. Like I had been stolen. Outside, black iron gates emerged through the snowfall, towering above the car like a fortress wall. They slid open without a sound. Frostfall Estate rose. Behind them, massive ancient stone, covered in frost, its windows glowing with the amber warmth of a life I no longer knew how to belong to. As the car approached, dark-coated guards moved in formation along the path, rifles slung across their chests, scanning the perimeter with military precision. My breath hitched. I remembered this place, but not this version of it. Aldridge's voice cut through the quiet. The chairman insisted security be doubled until your return. My return. My voice sounded small. You have always belonged here, my lady, even when you thought otherwise. The Rolls-Royce eased to a stop beneath the stone archway. Before I could gather myself, the door opened. A blast of winter rushed in, then a heavy wool cloak settled over my shoulders. Aldridge extended his hand, and for a moment I hesitated, one foot in the life I had built with Damian, the other in the empire I had abandoned. Then a familiar voice broke the stalemate. Aurelia. I froze. It was raspy, older than I remembered, but unmistakable. Archibald Wynn stood at the top of the steps, gripping a cane wrapped in a long charcoal coat. Age had carved deeper lines into his face, but his presence still filled the entire entrance like a winter storm. His eyes, sharp steel blue, softened the moment they landed on me. My girl, he breathed. Come here. I didn't realize. I was crying until the cold stung the tears on my face. I stumbled forward, and he met me halfway, despite Aldridge's alarmed protest. He cupped my cheeks with gloved hands, his touch trembling. You're freezing, he whispered. What did they do to you? I couldn't answer. My voice had died somewhere between Norvin Street and this place. He pulled me into a fierce embrace, stroking the back of my head the way he used to when nightmares woke me as a child. I should have come sooner, he murmured. I should never have let you go. I pressed my face against his shoulder, the scent of cedar and old books, pulling memories from places I thought I had locked away forever. The safety was overwhelming. Aldridge cleared his throat softly. Sir, we should bring her inside. Archibald guided me through the grand doors, past roaring fireplaces and marble floors. The estate smelled of pine wood and cinnamon, but beneath the warmth lingered something else, fear, concern, anger. He led me to the great hall, and sat me by the fire. Servants appeared silently, with blankets, ginger tea, and warm towels. Archibald dismissed them all with a curt nod. Only when we were alone did he sit across from me and take my hand. "Aurelia," he said, voice low and steady, despite the tremor in his fingers. "I need you to tell me everything." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. He squeezed my hand, expression darkening. "Damian Hart did not find you by accident. He did not love you by accident. That family did not walk into your life by accident." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. What do you mean?" Archibald leaned back, eyes blazing with a fury colder than the frost outside. "They were planted," he said, "by Helion Core." My heart slammed against my ribs. "They didn't only betray you," he continued. "They infiltrated this family through you." The fire crackled sharply, sending sparks into the air. Frostfall's walls felt suddenly cavernous, like the estate itself was holding its breath. And for the first time, since being thrown into the snow, I realized the truth. My nightmare wasn't over. It was just beginning. Celeste Ward didn't knock. When she entered the firelit study, she never had. She moved like a blade, clean, precise, honed for cutting through illusions. I had barely wrapped my hands around the warm mug Archibald gave me when she set a stack of folders on the table with a sound too sharp for such a quiet room. The air inside Frostfall felt steady, safe, but Celeste's expression told me that whatever lived inside those folders was colder than any blizzard outside. I braced myself without knowing why. She flipped open the first file, and rows of numbers glared up at me. Statements, withdrawals, transfers, balances that made no sense. All of it mine, all of it stolen. She tapped one page lightly. "This," she said, "is the story of 9 years you thought you understood." Something inside me buckled. I had lived those 9 years. I had bled for them. I had loved through them. And yet Celeste spoke as if they belonged to someone else. Aldridge dimmed the overhead lamp, leaving only the fire dancing against the windows. Archibald leaned forward, his jaw tight, a storm gathering behind his eyes. The crackle of burning wood filled the silence until Celeste slid the first statement toward me. "Your monthly allowance from the Wynn Dominion Trust," she said. 40,000 euros. I blinked. "What? No. It's 5. It has always been 5. "That," Celeste replied, "is what you were told." She clicked a small remote, and the monitor on the far wall lit up with a timeline 10 years of transactions. At first, the numbers blurred together, but then she zoomed in. 40,000 euros. Every month, without fail. My lungs tightened. "I never saw that money," I whispered. "No," Celeste said. "You didn't?" She swiped to the next slide. "Because Damian Hart did." The world tilted. Heat drained from my face. "He set up joint access to your trust," she continued, 2 months after your wedding. "Without your knowledge. He forged a supplementary consent form using your old passport signature. Classic financial abuse." My hands shook so badly, I had to set the mug down. Archibald pressed a hand to his forehead. Pain, raw, paternal, furious, etched every line on his face. 9 years, he whispered. They drained her for 9 years. Celeste brought up another screen, a web of shell accounts, thinly disguised as freelance, clients, consultancy fees, and reimbursements. The name at the center of every spoke Damian Hart. He siphoned nearly 5 million euros, she said. A slow bleed. Precise. Intentional. Her laser pointer snapped to the right side of the board, another cluster of accounts. My breath caught when I saw the corporate logos, Helion Core, Conglomerate, Obsidian Ridge Capital. 2 firms I'd seen in the news giants, known for hostile takeovers, shell companies, corporate espionage. What does Helion Core have to do with this? I asked, dread clawing its way up my throat. Celeste gave me a look that held no softness at all. Everything. She pulled out another folder, thicker, darker, marked with red tabs. We have emails between Damian and a Helion Core advisor dated back to the first year of your marriage. They instructed him to maintain proximity to you, to gain influence, to isolate you, to monitor Wynn Dominion activity. I stared at the pages, unable to breathe. Your marriage, Celeste said softly, was never a marriage. It was an infiltration. Something shattered inside me. Something I didn't even realize had been holding me upright. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady the pounding. But why? Me? My voice cracked. Why not approach the family directly? Archibald answered before Celeste could. Because they knew I would never allow an outsider into our inner circle. But you were the heir no one expected. You were young, kind, trusting. They thought you would be easy to breach. I looked down at the pages again. Statements, forged signatures, transfers, disguised as medical bills, and freelance expenses. Everything I had worked for, everything I had saved, scraped, protected, gone. Celeste placed one final document in front of me, a screenshot of Damian's message to his Helion Core handler the week before he threw me out. Almost done. It read, "The divorce papers are ready. After the transfer, she'll be out, and the Wynn girl will be off the board for good." A coldness far deeper than Oswain's winter settled into my bones. They used me, I whispered. Every day, every year. Celeste nodded once. Yes. Archibald leaned closer, his voice trembling with the force of his contained rage. But now he said the game changes. Celeste shut the folder with a decisive snap. Because we're no longer analyzing what they stole, she said. We're planning how to take everything back. And in the reflection of the firelit window, for the first time, I didn't see the woman thrown into the snow. I saw the woman who was going to make them pay. The first time I held the training gloves, I thought they would make me feel strong. Instead, they felt like a confession proof that I had spent 9 years shrinking, folding myself into smaller and smaller shapes, just to fit into someone else's idea of love. The mirrors in the Frostfall training hall didn't reflect the girl who used to flinch when Damian raised his voice. They reflected someone I didn't recognize yet, someone my body hadn't caught up to, and that terrified me more than any enemy outside these walls. But Rafa didn't care about terror. He didn't care about bruises, or fear, or the phantom ache of past hands that had shoved me into the snow. Fear is a story, he said, tossing me the gloves. Write a better one. I tightened the straps. My knuckles pressed against the padding. My pulse hammered like it wanted out. Again, Rafa ordered. My stance wobbled. My breath shook. But I lifted my fists, because I had no intention of being weak ever again. Rafa paced in front of me, like a war general, broad, weathered, solid. The training hall was made of glass and steel, overlooking a sheer drop into miles of untouched white forest. Dawn light streaked across the mountains, bathing everything in cold gold. Strength isn't about muscle, he said. It's about endurance, pain, tolerance, knowing the ground beneath you and refusing to fall through it. He tapped my shoulder, jab. I struck the heavy bag. My wrist buckled. Wrong, he said, catching my arm before I could stumble. You're still apologizing in your movements. Damian taught you that. I'm teaching you to forget it. He adjusted my stance, repositioned my feet, pressed my shoulders back. Again, I hit the bag harder. Pain jolted up my arm, but the impact didn't send me backward this time. Good, he said. Again. By the 5th strike, my breath was ragged. By the 10th, sweat trickled down my spine. By the 20th, I felt something shifting, something loosening in my ribs, something uncoiling in places I had kept locked for years. Rafa circled me, a predator training another predator. "Do you know why Damian chose you?" he asked. I froze. Rafa didn't stop. "Because you were soft. Because you were obedient. Because you thought kindness was a shield." I bristled. "Kindness isn't a weakness." He met my eyes dark, sharp, unblinking. "No," he said. "But being afraid of your own strength is." He grabbed my wrist, lifted my fist again. "Hit the bag," he ordered. "Hit it like you're hitting the lie you lived for 9 years." My throat tightened. "Rafa, hit it." I struck. Again. I hit harder. Again. I slammed my fist into the leather until the sound echoed across the hall. The pain in my knuckles blended with the memory of Damian's hand around my arm, the crack of the torn nightgown, the taste of snow when he threw me into it. My chest cracked open. I screamed not from pain, but from release. Rafa stepped back satisfied. "There she is," he murmured. "The real you." We shifted to endurance drills, ropes, weighted sled pushes, incline sprints. My legs trembled. My lungs burned. Every muscle felt like it was unraveling, like I was being remade from the inside out. Between sets, Rafa handed me a water bottle. "You'll need stamina," he said. "You're facing a corporate machine, a hostile conglomerate, men who eat pressure for breakfast. To survive their world, your body has to handle more than fear. It has to handle cortisol, sleepless nights, negotiation tables where everyone wants you to break first." I took a shaky breath. "And if I do," he tilted his head. "Breaking isn't the problem. Staying broken is." We moved to self-defense. Elbow strikes, average moves, takedowns. Rafa demonstrated the technique on a weighted dummy. "If anyone ever grabs you like he did," he said, "you won't freeze again. You'll end it." I swallowed hard. "I don't want to become violent." "You won't," he said. "You'll become capable." By noon, my limbs felt like molten lead. My hair stuck to my neck. My shirt was damp with sweat. Rafa handed me a towel, his tone softer now. "You're learning fast." "I don't feel fast," I said, wiping my face. He smirked. "That's because you're only feeling the pain. The strength comes later." As we walked toward the glass balcony, overlooking the valley, he added, "Training isn't about turning you into a weapon. It's about reminding you that no one gets to throw you away again." I leaned against the railing, staring at the endless sweep of white forest, the untouched quiet. "I didn't think fighting back would look like this," I whispered. "What did you think it would look like?" he asked. "Like yelling, like crying, like revenge." Rafa shook his head. "Revenge is a fire," he said. "Burns fast, burns out." He pointed to the sun rising behind the peaks. "What you're building is endurance, clarity, power that lasts." The wind brushed against my face, cold, but no longer biting. I flexed my fingers. They trembled, but they were steady enough. For the first time, I didn't feel like a woman who had been thrown into the snow. I felt like a woman learning how to stand on ice and not slip. "Same time tomorrow?" Rafa asked. I nodded. "Good," he said, "because you're not done becoming dangerous." The first time I opened one of Damian's forged documents, my hands didn't shake from fear. They shook from rage. Not the explosive screaming kind, but the quiet surgical fury that settles in your bones when you finally see the trap you lived inside. The lies weren't messy or improvised. They were engineered, calculated, designed to strip me of every legal right I had. My signature, my trust weaponized against me. And for the first time since the snow, I understood Damian didn't break me in a single night. He dismantled me over years, one clause, one harmless form, one just sign, this babe at a time. And now, with Jonas Red folding open the divorce contract under the golden library lights of Frostfall, I was finally reading the story of my own undoing. But this time, I wasn't the victim in the margins. I was the editor holding the red pen. Jonas slid a thick booklet across the polished stone table. "Start with page 4, he said. "That's where the rot shows." I flipped. The language hit me like a blade, subtle, hidden under layers of professionalism, but unmistakably malicious. Aurelia Wynn acknowledges full responsibility for marital deterioration. My breath caught. I never said that. Jonas tapped the clause. "You signed it." I didn't read it. That's what men like Damian count on. He flipped to the next section, asset division. Or rather, asset stripping. My trust withdrawals listed as household debt repayments. My personal savings folded into joint holdings for business expansion. My premarital apartment labeled gifted property. He took everything I whispered. No, Jonas corrected calm as stone. He borrowed everything, and borrowing has consequences. He pulled out a second file, this one thinner, stamped with a silver crest. "What's this?" Jonas leaned back. "Your escape hatch. Written by your parents' legal team years ago. A failsafe." My pulse kicked. "For what?" "For this," he said simply. "For someone exploiting your name." I opened the folder. There it was, a dormant clause, legally binding, activated the moment fraud touched my assets. The Wynn Fiduciary Restoration Protocol. A long name for something beautifully simple. The minute someone tried to steal from me, the entire machine of the Wynn Empire locked down, clawing back every cent, every property, every investment connected to my funds. And whoever touched those funds, they were exposed, publicly, legally, permanently. "It's a nuclear switch," Jonas said. "Your parents were protective to the point of paranoia. Thank God." A bitter laugh scraped my throat. Damian has no idea what he triggered. "Oh," Jonas murmured, "he's about to." He pushed another set of papers toward me. "We're preparing a counteraction filing. But before we submit, I need you to understand something." I met his steady gaze. "This isn't just a divorce," he said. "This is corporate warfare." He forged financial transfers. He misrepresented your assets. He blackmailed you into signing. That's criminal fraud. We can bury him. A shiver ran down my spine. Not fear, want. I wanted him buried. I wanted the Harts, his toxic, sneering family, exposed. I wanted the truth printed so loudly, the whole city heard it echo off its skyscrapers. I straightened. "Show me everything." For the next hours, Jonas walked me through the mechanics of my own betrayal. Damian had funneled my trust money through shell accounts tied to Hart Company affiliates. He had siphoned funds to cover loan defaults. He had forged email chains and staged false financial red flags. He had built his entire success on my inheritance and then discarded me like garbage. As the sun dipped behind the Frostfall Mountains, Jonas placed a final document in front of me. "This," he said, "is the nuclear option." I skimmed it. My chest tightened. A single motion won. I had the full legal right to submit, would revoke Damian's access to every asset connected to his business, freeze his accounts, trigger investigations, collapse every deal he was juggling. It would ruin him. "It won't just hurt him," Jonas warned. "It will ignite a chain reaction. Collateral damage. Chains he's tied to others." I closed the folder. "He left me to freeze," I said. "Let the fallout start." Jonas nodded. "Then tomorrow we begin." I exhaled slowly, letting the weight settle. When Damian forged my signature, he thought he was ending me, but he only opened this door to the one thing he never saw coming. The return of Aurelia Wynn. The first time I saw the real numbers behind Damian's successful consulting firm, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. The glossy image he curated online, the tailored suits, the rented sports cars, the speeches about entrepreneurial grind, all of it was a cardboard set held up by one thing: women. Women he charmed. Women he drained. Women he convinced They were lucky to have his attention. And as I flipped through the digital forensic audit Rafa had extracted, one truth settled like a blade into the center of my chest. Damian hadn't just betrayed me. He had a pattern, a system, a factory of manipulation. And I was about to break every bolt in it. Rafa leaned over my shoulder, calm as a surgeon. 3 women stand out, all recent, all financially tied to him. I clicked the first file. A photo popped up, bright, curated, filtered. A fitness influencer named Leanna Cruz. Bold makeup, sculpted abs, millions of followers. He manages her sponsorships, Rafa said. Or rather, he steals 80% of her revenue. My jaw tightened. She doesn't know. She thinks brands pay her $5,000 per deal. They actually pay 50. The next file opened automatically when I swiped. A woman in her 40s, elegant, dignified, Margot Hale, founder of Hale Interiors. She owns a boutique furniture company, Rafa said. Damian convinced her to take a predatory loan from one of the conglomerates backing him. Interest rates so high, she'll default before spring. Once she does, her intellectual property becomes theirs. He's selling her company, I whispered. Piece by piece. Without her knowing, my stomach clenched. I swiped again. The third woman was young, far too young. A grad student named Elise Rowan. Soft features, warm eyes. The kind of girl who still trusted the world more than she feared it. She writes proposals for him, Rafa said. Urban planning drafts, client pitches. He pays her with attention. How long? 2 years. I shut the laptop gently, because if I didn't, I might slam it shut hard enough to crack it. Rafa crossed his arms. You asked for names. You asked for truth. Now you have both. My pulse pounded a sharp rhythm behind my ribs. I had expected betrayal. I had expected cruelty. But not this. Not a pipeline of women he siphoned dry. Not a cycle he perfected. Do they know about me? I asked. No, Rafa said. He told each one a different story. That you cheated. That you were unstable. That you trapped him in a cold marriage. He made himself the victim. Typical. Damian always cast himself as wounded when caught with a knife in his hand. I stood pacing the floor of the Frostfall strategy room. Outside, snow blew in spirals across the courtyard. The world white and quiet. Nothing like the storm building inside me. Rafa watched me closely. You're thinking of contacting them? Yes. You can't confront all 3 at once. I don't plan to confront anyone. I turned back toward him. I plan to expose him. Rafa nodded slowly. Then you'll need leverage. Proof they'll believe. Proof Damian can't twist. He opened a drawer, pulling out 3 sealed envelopes. What's this? Unedited footage, he said. Emails, bank transfers, a map of how each woman was pulled into his orbit. They deserve to know the truth. I took the envelopes. They felt heavy, alive, dangerous. When you meet them, Rafa added, remember, you're not there to fight them. You're there to free them. I hesitated. What if they blame me? They might, he said honestly. But once they see the evidence, they'll blame the right person. I breathed out slowly. Then, something unexpected crawled into my thoughts. Something electric and dark. They could help me, I murmured. Rafa raised a brow. Help you bury him. Help me end him. I imagined it. 3 women, 3 stories, 3 testimonies, twisted into a single blade, aimed at the heart of Damian's carefully built persona. Not revenge, justice. Rafa stepped closer, lowering his voice. Aurelia, destroying him won't erase what he did to you. I know, but it will change who you become. I know that too. He studied me, then nodded. Then we start with the strongest link, he said. The one most likely to talk. Liana, no, Rafa said. Margot. Why? She's the one with the most to lose and the most to gain from the truth. I looked down at the envelopes, my fingers tightening around them. Once I opened them, once I stepped into their stories, there would be no turning back. This wasn't just a mission. This was a reckoning. And Damian Hart had no idea the storm he created was about to circle back and swallow him whole. The hotel lounge was too warm, too elegant, too full of soft jazz for the kind of war I was walking into. But that was the trick, wasn't it? Men like Damian hid their crimes behind luxury, silk shadows, marble floors, crafted illusions. That's why Margot Hale didn't know she was bleeding yet. Victims rarely feel the cut until the wound is already deep. As I stepped into the lounge, every nerve in my body braced for confrontation, for rejection, for disbelief. But I wasn't here to beg her to trust me. I was here to hand her the truth and let it detonate. She sat alone at a corner table, posture, straight fingers wrapped around a porcelain cup of chamomile tea. 40-something, poised graceful strength, wrapped in exhaustion. I recognized it instantly, because I had worn that same expression once. I approached slowly. "Miss Hale," I asked. She looked up cautious, but polite. "Yes, I'm Aurelia." Recognition flickered, not from knowing me, but from knowing of me. Damian's stories had traveled far, and he had painted me as the villain in every one of them. Margot gestured stiffly to the seat across from her. "You asked for this meeting. I assume this is about Damian." I sat. "It is. And I'm afraid everything he told you about me is a lie." Her lips tightened. "He said you cheated, that you abandoned him, He abandoned me in a snowstorm," I said calmly, "and photographed me on the ground while his mother laughed." Margot blinked. "That's not what he—" "Of course it isn't." I pulled out the sealed envelope Rafa had prepared. Its weight felt like a heartbeat. "This is for you." She hesitated. "What is it?" "Proof." For a long moment, she didn't touch it. Then, with a careful inhale, she opened the flap and slid the documents free. The color drained from her face almost instantly. I watched her eyes scan the pages, her signature forged on predatory loan contracts, Damian's emails coordinating with Obsidian Ridge Capital, the projected timeline showing exactly when her company was set to collapse. It took less than a minute for her hand to start trembling. "This can't be real," she whispered. "It is. Damian arranged for your loan to default. Once it did, your designs, trademarks, and manufacturing rights would become assets of the conglomerate backing him." She looked up sharply. "He said the loan was aggressive, but necessary. He said he was helping me grow. He was helping them gut you." Margot pushed back into her seat, as if the betrayal itself had weight. "I trusted him," she murmured. "I let him into every part of my business. That was the point." Silence tightened between us. Not angry silence, wounded silence. I let her breathe, let her process, let her hurt. Finally, she swallowed hard. "Why are you helping me?" "Because he used me too," I said. "And because I don't want him to do to you what he did to me." Her gaze lingered on me for several long seconds. Then softly, "There are 2 others, aren't there?" "Yes." "Is he hurting them too?" "He's cultivating them," I corrected. "It's only a matter of time before he pulls them into the same trap." Margot closed the folder gently, as if she were afraid it might burn her. "What do you need from me?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "I'm giving you the truth. What you choose to do with it is up to you." She studied me again longer, this time deeper. "You're not what he said you were." "No," I said quietly. "I never was." Another pause. Then she asked, voice lower, "Are you planning to bring him down?" "I'm planning," I said, to stop him. Margot exhaled slowly, her breath trembling. She tapped her fingers against the envelope before sliding it into her purse. "If you need me to speak," she said, "I will." I blinked. "You don't have to." "I want to," she interrupted. "I want to make sure no one else ends up where I almost did." Slowly, deliberately, she extended her hand across the table. I took it. Her grip was firm, steady, strong. "When you're ready," she said, "I'll be there." As I walked out of the hotel, into the cold Oswin night, something settled inside me, a sharp, steady certainty. One woman believed me. One voice had joined mine. 2 more would follow. And when they did, Damian's empire wouldn't just crack, it would fall. The studio lights were hotter than I expected, bright clinical stripping away every shadow, the way the truth was about to strip away Damian's entire persona. Titan Europe. Magazine didn't do small stories. They didn't do soft features. They did exposés that cracked open empires. And today, I wasn't here as the girl thrown into the snow. I wasn't here as the wife discarded. I was here as the heiress the world didn't know existed. The woman Helion Core underestimated. The woman Damian tried to erase. As the mic clipped to my collar and the camera operator raised his hand to signal the countdown, I realized something simple, electric, terrifying. Once I opened my mouth, nothing would ever be the same again. 3, 2, 1. Aurelia, the host, began. Thank you for joining us. I understand today you're making your first public statement. I looked straight into the lens. My only statement I corrected. Because after this, the evidence speaks for itself. The host blinked at my tone, but recovered quickly. You've been involved in what appears to be a large-scale case of financial abuse, asset siphoning, and some speculate infiltration by a competing conglomerate. Can you confirm any of that? I can confirm all of it, I said. A ripple moved through the studio. The director leaned forward. The camera zoomed in. My trust fund was stolen, I continued. My signature was forged. My marriage was a staged infiltration, orchestrated by people who believed isolating me would give them power over my family's empire. You're referring to Helion Core? Yes. The host took a slow breath. And your ex-husband, Damian Hart? For a moment, I tasted snow again, the metallic bite of winter, the burn of humiliation, the echo of Vivian's laughter. Damian was their entry point, I said. A trained manipulator, a financial parasite. He groomed multiple women, siphoned their money, stole their companies, and funneled their assets to conglomerates that profited off destabilizing smaller businesses. Do you have proof? I reached into the folder beside me and placed 3 bundles of documents on the table, Margot's, Liana's, Elise's. Their stories, their signatures, their messages, their losses. Everything you need is here, I said, and copies have already been submitted to the Financial Regulatory Bureau. The host's eyes widened. You bypassed the courts. I didn't bypass anyone, I replied. I accelerated justice. A murmur swept across the crew. And what about your own story? He pressed gently. What happened to you that night? The snow flashed in my mind. The cold, the laughter, the ache in my bones. I was abandoned outside my home, I said quietly. Thrown out wearing only a nightdress. His mother recorded it. It was a performance meant to humiliate me into silence. The host leaned closer. But you didn't stay silent. No, I said. Because the moment my family found me, everything changed. He hesitated, then asked what the whole city was wondering. Is it true, he said slowly, that you are the heir to Wynn Dominion? Silence coiled in the air. Then I nodded. A beat, 2 beats, and the world shifted. A phone buzzed somewhere on set. Then another notifications alerts breaking news banners. The host glanced toward the producer who gave a frantic nod. Aurelia, he said, Titan Europe has just confirmed your identity with Wynn Dominion's Public Relations Office. You are officially listed as the Executive Vice Chair. I sat still, letting the shock ripple, letting the cameras capture every second. Then, let me make this clear, I said. My revenge is not personal. It is structural. No one, no woman, no small business, no unsuspecting partner will ever be trapped by Damian Hart or Helion Core again. The host swallowed. And what happens now? I folded my hands, calm, steady, unshakable. Now, I said, we begin dismantling everything they built on stolen trust. A buzz filled the studio as the director signaled cut, but the host leaned in, lowering his voice. Aurelia, this interview is going viral already. I stood smoothing my blazer. Good. Because that was the point. As I walked out of the studio into the crisp Oswin morning, my phone vibrated with dozens of notifications. Hashtags, rising clips, spreading women, sharing their own stories. Investors demanding answers from Helion Core. One headline dominated every feed. The Wynn heiress speaks, and Damian Hart falls first. And somewhere across the city, Damian would finally realize that the woman he threw into the snow was now the one lighting the match beneath everything he ever touched. His collapse wasn't coming. It had already started. The ice cracked under my boots as I took another step toward the abandoned warehouse, its metal siding shuddering under the bite of the harbor wind. The world around me was frozen, a graveyard of shipping crates, cranes locked in place, the water below shifting like black glass. My breath formed white clouds, but inside my chest, everything burned. The text message had come from an unknown number. If you want the chairman alive, come alone. Ice Harbor, Dock 7. No threats, no signature, no need. I knew exactly who sent it. Vivian Hart had finally snapped the thin thread holding her together, and she was dragging my family into her madness. As I approached the chain doors, every instinct screamed to run, to wait for Aldridge and the security team to be rational. But the image of Archibald Wynn, my grandfather, my anchor bound, and at the mercy of a woman who had laughed while I froze in the snow, made rationality irrelevant. I pushed the doors open. Cold, cavernous darkness swallowed me whole. Close the door. Vivian's voice snapped from somewhere inside. Let's not waste the heat. I stepped forward, eyes adjusting. Archibald was tied to a chair at the center of the warehouse, a single industrial lamp casting a harsh circle of light around him. Tape cut across his mouth. His coat was gone. His hands were purple from the cold. Grandfather, I breathed. A metallic click echoed. Vivian stepped into the light, a canister of industrial-grade fuel in one hand and a cigarette in the other, her lipstick smeared like war paint. Her eyes were wild, bloodshot, dilated, full of the desperation of a woman with nothing left to lose. Well, well, she hissed. The princess arrived. My pulse thudded against my ribs. Let him go. Or what? She laughed, a jagged, broken sound. You'll take more from me. Freeze my accounts. Turn the world against my family. You already stole everything. I took back what you stole, I said evenly. Damian committed fraud. You helped him. Her expression twisted. He was a good man until you came back into your precious empire's arms. A good man. I stepped closer. Vivian, I don't want to do this here. Oh, but I do, she whispered. I want you to feel what I felt. Powerless, helpless, terrified. She flicked fuel onto the concrete floor, the smell sharp enough to sting my throat. This warehouse burns in under 5 minutes, she said. Faster if I spill more. Vivian, I warned. Listen to yourself. This isn't you. Her laugh cracked like glass. This is exactly me. My hand drifted to the inside of my coat, where Rafa had sewn the tracker. It wasn't much, but it was a beacon. If the tactical team caught the signal in time, but in time was disappearing quickly. You ruined my son, Vivian shrieked. You ruined all of us. No, I said, stepping fully into the circle of light. Damian ruined himself. She raised the lighter. Archibald struggled against the ohm's muffled sounds of warning beneath the tape. Let him go, I said, voice steady, and I'll go with you. That made her pause. You? Vivian sneered. What could I possibly want from you? Leverage, I replied softly. You want someone to blame, someone to punish? Take me. Archibald shook his head violently. Vivian froze just long enough. A faint vibration buzzed against my hip. The tracker. They were here. Vivian's eyes darted to the dark corners of the warehouse. She sensed it too. No, she screamed. No, no, no. She lunged toward Archibald. A crack split the air. A single precise shot shattered the lighter in her hand, sending sparks harmlessly across the concrete. Oswin. Tactical, a low voice boomed. Step away. Vivian staggered back, shrieking, clutching her hand. Aldridge emerged from the shadows with 6 armed operatives, moving in a synchronized formation, sweeping the area. Rafa was the first to reach me. Are you hurt? Get my grandfather, I said, already moving toward Archibald. Aldridge cut the ropes with a swift blade, pulling the chairman into his arms. Sir, you're safe now. Vivian collapsed to her knees, screaming incoherently, as operatives pinned her hands behind her back. You think this changes anything? She spat at me. You think you've won? I looked down at her, the woman who mocked my suffering, who tried to burn my family alive. No, I said, but I'm done losing. Rafa's hand settled briefly on my shoulder, steady grounding. We need to leave, he said. The fuel vapors are unstable. As the team escorted us out the frozen harbor, wind hit my face, sharp and clean. Blue lights flashed across the docks as authorities arrived, securing the scene. Archibald gripped my hand weakly. My brave girl, he rasped. I squeezed back, because tonight the Harts had made their final move, and tomorrow it would be my turn. The courtroom doors opened with a heavy groan, and for a heartbeat, the entire room fell silent. Not because of me, but because of the woman being dragged inside in handcuffs. Vivian Hart looked nothing like the icy matriarch who once held her phone over me as I shivered in the snow. Her hair was tangled, her lipstick smeared her wrists, trembling as officers guided her to the defendant's table. The crowd parted around her like she carried a plague, but the silence didn't last. Reporters swarmed, cameras clicked, voices rose like a tidal wave. Attempted arson, kidnapping, corporate fraud, wire, manipulation, collusion, Helion Core involvement. Every headline buzzed with her name. But the man beside her, Damian, was what made the room truly shift. He entered pale, hollow, like someone who had been awake for days. No suit, no swagger, no curated charm. Just a man, unraveling under the weight of the empire he tried to steal. His lawyer pushed him toward the seat next to Vivian, but he stared only at the judge's bench, refusing to meet my eyes. Good, because I wasn't here as the snow-soaked woman he discarded. I was here as his reckoning. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The trial began. State your plea, the judge commanded. Vivian spat. Not guilty, her voice shrill and cracking. Damian hesitated, shaking, sweating, before whispering guilty to all counts. A shockwave rippled through the room. Vivian's head snapped toward him. You traitor! You pathetic! Silence in the courtroom, the judge barked. But it was too late. Damian had turned his head toward me, at last, eyes glassy, voice trembling. I can't do this anymore, he said. I can't lie for them. This is coercion, Vivian screamed. No, Damian said quietly. This is truth. The prosecutor stepped forward. Mr. Hart, you are admitting to orchestrating financial fraud, forging signatures, siphoning trust funds, and operating under instructions from Helion Core affiliates. Yes, Damian whispered. They recruited me. They promised me a future. They used me. And I used her. My jaw clenched, but I kept my gaze steady. Damian swallowed, voice breaking. Aurelia, you will not address the victim directly, the judge snapped. Damian shut his eyes. Continue, the prosecutor said. Damian took a shallow breath. Helion Core wanted access to Wynn Dominion. They told me marrying her was the fastest route. They planned everything: the accounts, the documents, the staged infidelities, even the night we threw her out. Shame twisted his face. It wasn't supposed to go that far. Vivian insisted. Vivian lunged to him, shrieking, "Don't you dare pin this on me!" Officers held her down. The prosecutor's voice sharpened, and Victor Thorne, Damian nodded weakly. He was our contact. He coordinated everything from inside Wynn Dominion. The leaks, the reports, he fed them all. A ripple of gasps tore through the spectators. Victor, seated among corporate observers, stiffened. His jaw clenched, but the facade cracked. Security moved toward him. "I have evidence," Damian continued. "Emails, wire logs, meeting transcripts. He told me once the divorce was finalized and Aurelia signed away her inheritance. Helioncore would handle the rest." "Handle?" the prosecutor repeated. "Meaning what?" Damian's shoulders sagged. "Remove her." The room erupted. Journalists shouted. Cameras flashed. Vivian screamed that her son was lying, that everyone was conspiring. But the judge's gavel thundered like a hammer striking steel. When order returned, the prosecutor turned to me. "Ms. Wynn, do you wish to make a statement to the court?" I stood. Every eye turned toward me, but I looked only at the judge. "For 9 years," I said, voice steady, "I was isolated, manipulated, and financially exploited. Not because I was weak, but because they believed Owen would look for me. Because they thought a woman alone can be erased quietly." My eyes flicked briefly to Damian. "They were wrong." I inhaled, letting the words settle. "I'm not asking for vengeance. I'm asking for protection for myself, for the women Damian deceived, for the businesses he drained, and for every future victim who could fall into the same trap." This wasn't a romantic betrayal. It was organized exploitation. I met the judge's gaze. "I want justice, nothing less." The judge nodded gravely. "Justice you will have." Verdicts were delivered before the sun set. Damian Hart, 25 years. For kidnapping, attempted arson, conspiracy, and financial misconduct. Damian Hart, 8 years for fraud, collusion, and corporate espionage, with additional investigations pending. Victor Thorne, arrested in the courtroom, charged with internal sabotage, breach of fiduciary duty, and corporate collusion with Helioncore. As the officers led them away, Damian glanced at me one last time, an expression not of anger, but collapse. He was a man who finally saw the mirror and hated what stared back. I didn't look away, because for the first time since the snow, I wasn't the one trembling. They were. Frostfall's west balcony always caught the first light, and that morning the sun climbed over the mountains like it had been waiting for me. The snow-dusted pines shimmered. The river below cut a silver line through the valley. For the first time in months, maybe years, the world didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a beginning. Archibald stood beside me, leaning slightly on his cane, though there was a softness in his eyes I hadn't seen since childhood. The trial was over. The empire was safe. And though my scars were still tender, they no longer hurt to touch. "You brought us back from the brink," he said quietly. "You brought yourself back." I didn't answer at first. I watched the sun pool over the frozen fields, watched the frost steam from the rooftops below. Then I said I didn't do it alone. I didn't do. He smiled, small but proud. No one ever does. Inside the great hall was humming with activity: lawyers, board members, auditors, staff, reorganizing operations after Victor Thorne's arrest. But the energy was different now. Focused, loyal, rebuilt. And in the center of it all, a stack of documents waited for my signature. The official paperwork naming me as executive vice chair of Wynn Dominion. I signed them without hesitation. Aldridge entered a moment later, carrying a leather-bound folder. "My lady," he said, offering it to me. "With a small bow, the board has approved your proposal." I opened it. The White Wing Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to victims of financial abuse, coercive control, and corporate exploitation, legal aid, crisis grants, safe housing, investigative resources. Everything I once needed and had no one to ask for. Rafa arrived next, dressed in his usual black tactical jacket, but smiling for once. "Your board wants approval to fund satellite branches in 3 cities," he said. "Fast rollout." "Do it," I replied. "Already working on it." He squeezed my shoulder, just briefly. "You did good, Wynn." We walked through the estate together, past the grand staircases, the centuries-old portraits, the rooms that once felt like hollow echoes of a life I didn't deserve. Now they felt like stepping stones instead of ghosts. When we reached the strategy room, I paused at the sight of the bulletin board, once filled with Damian's schemes, Helion core charts, forensic maps. It was empty now, cleared, erased, a blank slate. I touched the edge of it. "Rafa." "Yeah, take it down." He smiled, with pleasure. That afternoon, I returned to Oswin City, not to hide in its shadows this time, but to walk straight through the places that once swallowed me. People recognized me now, not in pity, not in scandal, but in solidarity. Women stopped me just to say thank you. Business owners nodded with quiet understanding. Someone whispered, "She's the Wynn heiress who took down Helion Core's mole." I didn't shrink from the attention. I wasn't built to shrink anymore. Hours later, I stood before the glass tower of Wynn Dominion's urban headquarters, the city reflected in its surface, like 1,000 new possibilities. Inside, the board rose when I entered, not because I was royalty, not because I was wealthy, but because I had earned the right to lead. "We're ready whenever you are," the chairman said. I stepped up to the head of the table, the city glowing behind me. "Then let's begin." After the meeting, I returned once more to Frostfall's balcony. The sun was setting now, painting the sky rose gold, and a calm I had never known wrapped around me like a warm cloak. I breathed deeply, letting the last shadows of Damian and his mother drift away like thinning smoke. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. This was rebuilding. This was the life I was always meant to inherit. Not the title, not the empire, but the ability to stand unbroken after everything. And as the estate lights flickered on below me, I smiled, because I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I was no longer the woman thrown into the snow. I was the woman who learned to walk across the ice and command the world when the thaw finally came. If you'd like to follow more stories like this, share your thoughts below, hit like, and don't forget to subscribe. There's so much more still to come.